Good evening, all. Well, it's been a while since I've done one of these videos, and that's because I've been very busy in real life. Yeah, I have things to do. I'm not a professional YouTuber yet. But to cut a long story short, I've been doing the rounds of looking at secondary schools. My oldest son's going to be off there next year, so we've been touring all the schools in our area, state, private, grammar. The whole kit and caboodle. My wife she loves projects like this. Every day there seems to be another school that we're going to go off and visit and do the whole tour. I'm starting to get a bit worried because only 15 miles away and a fairly short drive is Eton. So I'm wondering if she's got us signed for an open evening there. Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to return to my series, which is the 10 most effective people on the anti-left. And I'm counting down from 10 to 1, even though confusingly I've titled these videos going upwards. So this is number 4 in the series, but it's actually number 7, counting down. And my choice is Boris Johnson. Now, I wanted to wait for a little while before I did this video, because I wanted to see how he did at the 2018 Conservative Party conference. Did he have a good conference or did he have a bad one? So the result of his performance there has influenced where this video is going to go, and I'll say at the end of it what I think happened in the aftermath of the conference and where his standing is. Now, for me, there are two Boris Johnsons. There is the public image that a lot of people associate with him, the bumbling one, the kind of stumbling, Latin quoting classicist, bit of a buffoon, with the shaggy blonde hair, getting stuck on a zip wire, getting into marital strife, sort of being the butt of everyone's joke on Have I Got News for You. There's that Boris. And then there's the other Boris, the serious Boris, the person of often great and insightful intellect. And yes, I did say that. And if you are a Boris Johnson hater, tough. The man is intelligent, sometimes frighteningly so, but he just hides it a lot of the time. But this is not about Boris Johnson, the all-round politician and Prime Minister potential. That's not what this video is about. It's about people who are effective on the anti-left, and I believe that Boris Johnson is extremely effective at opposing the left. You can always tell if someone's very effective because hit pieces start happening about people who call out the left for who they are. And Johnson is no stranger to the hit piece or to people running around saying that he's a great threat. But let's get into the two Boris Johnsons. So I'm not going to deal with the bumbler that much. I want to deal with the serious politician. And there are 3 key moments for Johnson, as I think as a politician, which stand out and which are the reasons why he's on this list. So the first one is the aftermath of the anti-capitalist riots a few years ago in London when he was mayor of London. And essentially the riots were fueled mostly by a lot of middle-class students and dropouts and layabouts who kicked off and started smashing up shops and stealing, looting, and just causing anarchy. And Johnson's speech the day after was the first time I really saw him as a very serious politician, because I consider the job of Mayor of London to be largely a joke, to be filled by a sort of colourful outsider from within their own party, people like Ken Livingstone. But Johnson was, initially I thought, was a bit like that. Well, we've got a maverick in the Conservative Party, give him the Mayor of London job, because it's a muck job. But his reactions after the riots were telling, and it's where I first saw the serious politician. And he called out the rioters for what they were. He knew what they were, and he stood side by side with who I thought was the iconic figure of the riots, which is a second generation Asian, Anglo-Asian immigrant who had a shop, and he was shown sort of picking up his broom the morning after the riots, where his shop, his street were just absolutely wrecked, and he started sweeping. He started to clear up the very first thing the next morning, and he was interviewed, and he was defiant of not giving in to these protesters in Herbert, and he was speaking highly about his community, and people rallied around him, and he became this iconic figure. This kind of here was this chap, an Anglo-Asian immigrant, who was evoking the Blitz spirit of 1940, and it became iconic. And there was Johnson alongside him, sort of articulating perfectly that feeling of defiance in the face of anarchy, in the face of just mindless, hate-filled violence. And that was his first defining moment. His second one was at the 2015 Conservative Party conference, a speech he gave there, where he absolutely nailed the character, the dark heart of the far left. This was at a time when the Labour Party was led by Ed Miliband, and it had not crossed the line into the Corbyn momentum era. And it was also a time when the parties were gearing up for the general election that year, which the Conservatives won. But Johnson's speech just absolutely hit the nail on the head, and I'm going to call it up now and quote from it. So, this is about the left. They have the same ruthless methods as the old colonialists that they purport to despise, in that they believe in divide and rule. Where there is a grievance, they foment it. Where there is sectarianism, they take sides. Where there are racial or religious or ethnic divisions, their instinct is always to play them up. And of course, there is one conflict they relish above all others, and that is economic class war. The belief that you can exalt the poor and the needy by bashing the wealth creators. Well, I think that's extremely accurate description. And it's interesting, he says that in 2015, when we weren't in the grip of social justice warriors and identity politics, and where we've seen the progressive left head in just 3 years. We've seen both the Democrat Party in America and the Labour Party in this country just fall into the pernicious grasp of identity politics and social justice activism. I don't even call it social justice, it's social revenge. That's a more accurate description, but there's Johnson calling it out in 2015. And the third speech that he gave is less about the left, but again, it reminds us about what serious Boris can do. And that is his resignation speech earlier this year as Foreign Secretary, where he attacked the Chequers Agreement and outlined a vision of a very positive, all-out Brexit. I won't go into the details because that doesn't really affect the anti-left, but it's just a reminder of where Johnson can be. So, where is Boris Johnson now that we've had the 2018 Conservative Party conference? Now, he gave a speech there, and it was very well received. Again, he was laying out his vision, and it was a call to arms. Or a rallying cry, not a call to arms. It wasn't that conflict driven, but it was certainly a rallying call for those people who want to leave the EU and the Conservative Party, and who are sceptical about the Chequers Agreement. So it was very good, and he covered a lot of ground that he did in his resignation speech, and it was very well received. And you get the impression, is Boris Johnson a Prime Minister in waiting? Well, yes, he's a contender. But I always think that maybe buffoon Boris might ruin things, that it creates a block. You see, this is the weird thing about buffoon Boris and serious Boris, is that Boris is really despised by the chattering classes, the urban middle class left, um, who seem to have a equal disdain for both the working classes that they want to exalt and the kind of upper middle classes or the upper classes, personified by Boris Johnson as well. But the weird thing about that is that Boris Johnson appeals to the working classes. There is an appeal, there is a connection between them. I think the working classes don't care if he went to Eton and don't care if he quotes Latin. They want to hear somebody. They want to hear an original, and they want to hear somebody articulating a message that's very clear, very direct, and sums up how people feel deep down inside. And Boris has that ability, and it shouldn't be underestimated. But would he make a good prime minister? Well, here's the thing. He did better than expected as London mayor. I would argue he has been the best London mayor so far out of all three of them, by far. And a lot of his success was that he didn't do much. And it's a Boris Johnson premiership. Might he be a British Calvin Coolidge, for example? Except a more verbose and Latin quoting one, but somebody who governs best by governing least. Boris's legacy has been the Boris bike, a very successful idea of bike hiring scheme in London, certainly much better than Ken Livingstone's obsession with rephasing traffic lights and bendy buses that explode, and Sadiq Khan's kind of no policing strategy. So Boris has potential, but he has the character flaws. We cannot ignore the flaws in his character, and that is the barrier. And at the end of the day at the Conservative Party conference, that although he did extremely well in his speech, the Prime Minister gave a speech that ensured that she would keep her job. And so it may be that the prize of becoming Prime Minister for Boris Johnson will just ever so slightly be out of his reach. And on that note, I conclude this episode of 10 Most Effective People on the Anti-Left. Join me next time for somebody else. I haven't got my list in front of me, so I can't tell you who that is or give you a clue. But I hope you have a good few days, and hopefully I will see you soon. Bye. Off button.